The principal's chair is a really lonely place. The question is, are you surrounding yourself with the right people? And do you have those people in the right positions to tap their skills? Recently, I was able to have a conversation with two incredible school leaders here in Central Florida about just that. So I'm really excited to welcome our guests to the episode, to the podcast. This is our first time with guests, so I'm super excited about having some friends here to chat about leadership. It's good stuff. So I have Dr. Drew Olson, who works here in Central Florida as well. He's director of secondary schools for one of our counties here in Central Florida. And I also have Michael Bobo, who's an assistant principal, who's also doing the work here in Central Florida as well. So I'm excited to have both of them join me to talk a little bit about work that they're super passionate about. You're going to get to learn more about them as we kind of move through the episode. But we're going to talk about distributed leadership, and you can't do this work alone. These two gentlemen know that for sure. It definitely takes a team around you to be able to move this work forward, which is something we've talked on this episode and I have chirped about. So I decided that my listeners don't need to listen to me all the time. You're going to get some other voices that are doing this work across Central Florida. So I'm really excited to kind of welcome them to the episode. Gentlemen, how you guys doing? Michael, how you doing?
Doing great, Mike. Just great to be here, man. This is exciting.
Good, man.
I didn't know we were your first guest. I don't know what to do with that. Like it's the first date thing. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, it's big time, man. I'm excited for sure because I'm normally just sitting here, just a talking head, and I'm excited to have some conversations for sure. Drew, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Mike. Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to chat with you guys a little bit. These guys have been doing work. Our paths crossed in my current role. I was able to meet them through just kind of our network, and I've learned a little bit about kind of the work that they've been engaged in leading that work, both in their districts, but also on their own too, right? Like they are super interested in sharing their knowledge and experience in leadership with the rest of the world. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, guys. I hope you're cool with that. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started and go in there. And I want to start off by asking you guys, why do you think the work of school leaders is so important to moving the work forward in schools? Drew, I'm gonna pass it over to you. Talk to me a little bit about like what's your thinking around school leadership.
Yeah, well, I mean, not my thinking, but the latest research. I was in a big district over in Hillsborough County, and we did a lot of leadership work with the Wallace Foundation, and they just came out with a big research study in 2020, maybe 2019, that talked about. We knew that the principalship was important, but the latest research says we probably underestimated how important it is, right? And so we know that teachers are the highest leverage point in school factors, but the principal's a close second. And the research came out from Wallace Foundation saying that we've underestimated even more because the principal's the one that sets the conditions for teaching to happen, right? So it's a tall order. When you're setting a culture, you're establishing the vision, you're putting all the moving parts together, but it's critical that school leadership.
Yeah, man, it's such important work, right? Like unless you sat in a chair, it's tough to really understand that. And that's one of the goals of this podcast is really to let listeners kind of build their toolboxes before they get to that place. Michael, talk to me a little bit about kind of your experience with the importance of school leaders and moving the work.
So since I've been in administration for the last 18 years, and I've been a principal, been assistant principal, been school leader. And what the biggest thing I see is your relationship with people, because across the board, if your students, parents, community, your teachers, if you don't, and the ones that are above you, if you don't have a type of relationship with them, nothing matters. So you got to know your people. And Drew is different than Mike, and Mike is different than Drew, and I got to place them in the right position. It's so many moving parts because Mike might be good this year, but next year I need to move Mike to another position. It's so many moving parts. For it to be successful in leadership, you have to always keep your head, like I have one guy that always said, man, Mike, keep your head on the swivel. You got to be able to see what's going on all around you so that you can understand it. A lot of times some people feel like, oh, I can be in my office and then everything is still run because I got good people running it. Yes, but if you don't see it as a leader, to walk around yourself and be able to access it, not only just the systems that you put in place, but the people that you have running the system that you put in place is key. So leadership, especially like Dr. Drew said about the principal being that second lever it's a huge lever that moves across the district, across your school. And if it's not used properly, we're not being successful.
Yeah. So you bring up really important points, right? About knowing your people and that part is so essential in building like a quality school culture. I wonder if you guys can talk a little bit about, because for those that may not know, and I will share in the show notes some of the work that these guys have done. If you guys are cool with it, I'd love to share some of the content from like one of the recent presentations you guys have done, because these guys speak at conferences and they just were at the Learning Forward conference delivering a session about distributed leadership. And the idea, Michael and Drew, you hit upon it too, right? Like your people are so important as you develop and put the people that are going to work around you are so essential. But that work is putting the team together is not easy either. So what barriers have you guys seen that is getting in the way of really letting school leadership teams kind of move that work forward? What barriers have you guys seen and experienced?
So I always go back to, and it's a part of our presentation, Smart Leader, Smarter Team. That book is just like, for me, is like the Bible of leadership. It talks about these 8 behaviors that you got to have in school teams. And in those 8 behaviors, it really starts to dig down into things that are important for a team to function genuinely. And one of the things they talk about is taking away total assumptions and inferences, which I think is huge, because sometimes we have certain assumptions with the people that we work with, certain expectations that we don't always say. There are certain inferences that we put out there, even as leaders. But if it's not talked about in an open setting and freely talked about, the team can't move forward. It'll always be that undercover, this is my term, I'm terming it now, copyright right now, undercover insubordination. You know, they say in your face, oh, we're going to do all this stuff, but then behind your back, they're not doing it. They say they're not doing it. Yeah, I know the principal wants us to do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go this way. You know, but we have to make sure that everybody not only understands the expectations, but any assumptions that are out there need to be gone and put away so that we all know what we expect from each other.
Yeah, Drew, before you jump in, I kind of want to hit on that, dig a little deeper on that, Michael, right? Like I'm a very transparent leader. You guys know that in our interactions, right, with one another. Transparency, I think, is such an essential tool for school leaders. And it's incredible how many leaders you talk to who expect teachers to tell students exactly what they expect from them, right? Like we got rubrics out the wazoo, we got scales, we want to know the all of the progressions of learning, but yet leaders don't do that for their teachers, you know? And like, how do I expect you to get where I need you to get? And if you don't know where I need you to go, like why make it a mystery? You know what I mean? Like talk about it, be intentional about it. It's such an important point that you talked about, Michael.
Yeah. And if it's not an open setting, that's the open culture, of course, people aren't going to feel like I can say it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need a whole bunch of yes people. And you don't need a whole bunch of people that argue everything that you say, right? Like we need to be able to collaborate as we're being transparent. I need to be transparent as a leader, but you need to be transparent as we collaborate together. So then I know exactly what you're expecting from me and from this whole thing because at the end of the day, it's about student achievement. No matter how we put it, we can package it any kind of way, but if our students aren't being successful, we're not being successful.
Yeah. Drew, you want to add on to that at all?
Yeah, I do. The 2 things, and I'll end up coming back to that point and tying it in. But I think one big challenge right now, when you talk about distributed leadership, you're talking about people, right? And involving other people in the mission and carrying the load with you. So the context for everybody, not only in education, but you got to talk about the labor shortage, right? And so there's just there's a drying up of the talent pool. So as a school leader, you really got to look at how you can maximize the talent that currently exists on your campus. So that's one big challenge that's worth a conversation. The second one, and I'm going to pull some research into this. And it'll be brief, I promise.
It's all good, man. Drop it on us, Drew.
There's a research that's out there. We just learned about this. Zanger and Folkman are the two researchers, but they identify 16 key competencies for school leaders. And the top 7, number 1 is character and integrity. Number 2 is being results driven. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all interpersonal skills, all of them, right? And so the point you were just talking about, number 3, communicating powerfully, prolifically, and clearly, that comes down to what you just were talking about with expectations, right? That's 3. Number 4 is inspiring and motivating others, right? That's an interpersonal skill. Number 5 is building relationships. Number 6 is developing others. And number 7 is the collaboration and teamwork. Those are all interpersonal skills. So when you talk about the challenges, and I've been a principal supervisor, your bosses aren't coming out and talking to school leaderships about how you're building relationships, right? It's not really the focus. You've got so much else on your plate as leaders. You've got safety and security. You've got management and operations. You've got teaching and learning, right? But you've got this other big set that kind of falls under that interpersonal skills that we almost don't focus on it, when it comes to, when you think about even master's programs, how much of an emphasis is there on skills?
Drew, I tell people all the time, they don't teach me that in principal school, right? Like, I mean, they leave that part out, right? And you just, but it's crazy, to your point, and that research to me is not surprising, Drew. I know it's not to you, Michael. I know it's not to you, right? That, I mean, we are in a people business. Our human capital is our greatest asset, right? And we have to be able to take care of that and support people. I'm shocked at how many leaders, I don't want to say, well, I'm going to say it, are ignorant of that mindset, right? And you wonder why, like, teachers are leaving the profession because they don't feel that support. And it's not easy, Drew. Like that work's not easy. I was speaking at a conference not too long ago, and we were talking about what are some things that are just 180-day battles. Like, you have to provide that level of support for your teachers for 180 days, man. Like, you can't come in pre-planning and be like, oh, rah, 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 like, I'm going to support you, and then never show up. Like, you have to be in it every day, dude. You know what I mean? And that, there's such important points that you talked about. And that research, I think, drives the point home, right? Like, what'd you say? The first seven points there are all about people functions, right? Like, in supporting your people, man. It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy. In the work that you guys have done around distributed leadership, why is it so important for principals and assistant principals to know how to distribute leadership? Why do you think that's so essential for them in their work?
Well, we all have affiliation with the National Center for Education Economy and the National Institute with School Leadership. We've all kind of gone through some of the content that's in there. And one of the things they talk about is a military term called VUCA, right? A VUCA environment, right? So VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? And so being in public education, the environment is so complex, like, it's literally impossible for one person to do it. And so you really do need to leverage the expertise of everybody that's in your room.
Yeah. If you don't, it becomes a real tough job, man. Michael, you want to add anything to that?
So it's the crazy part to me is, as you're leveraging, because, all right, so as we know, COVID messed us all up, right? And our kids, and then not only our students, but our parents and our community. So why am I mentioning that? Because as you have all this coming, we have also, as leaders, become task oriented. Like we have to get all these tasks done.
Yep.
And we're forgetting about the people part. So as I distribute this leadership, I need some people that can do tasks, because as a leader, oh man, I can't do it all. But if I don't have people, again, that know how to deal with people, all that's going to be null and void. We can get the task done, but people are still upset. If people aren't feeling supported on a daily basis, it means nothing. But we got that sent to the district, but the teachers feel like, man, I'm worn out. I'm burnt out. I'm done. Like last week, I don't know how many teachers we had out because they were burnt out. They were tired and they got sick. And what does this have to do with distributive leadership? Because those are our main people. They were our main people on campus,
right.
Subject area leaders, the head of things, and they were gone. So guess what? We had everybody else. So what did we have to do? Oh, we scrambling around as administration. Oh, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? Because our team wasn't able to function. When your team can't function, then everything goes awry. So that distributed leadership is important as a leader to make sure that, yes, I don't get stressed out. I don't get burnt out. Everybody feels a part of supporting everyone else. But most importantly, you have to make sure that they grow so that you're growing not only your leaders, but the leaders after the leaders, right? Because when those leaders aren't there, I need somebody else to step up. And it's not going to be like, oh, what do I do? It's going to be, oh, no, I'll take care of it and move the work forward.
Yeah, no, it's an important point. And the easiest way to add to your task list, Michael, is not take care of your people, right? Like your task list all of a sudden blows up. Big time for sure. Yeah, no, those are really important points that you just emphasized for us. I love Drew. You got that look like you want to add something. You want to go ahead and add something? Or?
I always want to add something. But no, I do think though, when you start having conversation around teacher retention, what keeps teachers out of school, right? How do you keep people there? Well, if they're a part of a mission that matters to them and they have a role in that, and you're tapping into their strengths, that's a distributive leadership is a great retention strategy, because you've got people that are more fulfilling their purpose.
Yeah. No, that's all. So many leaders ignore that, Drew. Right. Mm-hmm. Like I'll have conversations, coaching conversations, or even just in previous roles where they'll be like, well, I got 30 vacancies this year. And I'm like, have you asked, have you reflected on that? Are there things that are happening culturally that maybe are not speaking to staying in your building, and have you thought about that? And what are you going to do about it? But I'm always amazed about how many people don't even take time to reflect, on that. They just kind of wash their hands of it. And we're not in a position to do that. Like you have to cultivate the people that you have in your buildings and grow them. I used to talk to my staff all the time about you're an important investment for the school. When we hire you and bring you in, why would I want to give you a hard time and work toward firing you? I want to grow you. I need to pour everything that I can into you to make this investment grow for the best interest of the kids. And when you do that, you do break down some of those barriers that exist of just fear, like fear for my job or things that happen in really toxic school cultures. It's not easy being a teacher, man. That's a hard gig, and we need to support the hell out of them for sure. I'd love to hear, do you guys have some tips that leaders can embrace, or implement that'll help them around the ideas of distributed leadership?
Because sometimes we're in a system and we've been working that system for months, years, and we don't know how to get unstuck from that system. And when I talked about those 8 behaviors, it really starts to open up how you can have conversations with your team. If it's a first-year team or if it's a 10-year team that's been working together. How can we make sure that we're more open and continue to work together, that we can grow and show results from that growing? And again, just like Drew mentioned, Schwartz mentions a lot of things that interpersonal skills. It's not about just completing tasks.
Yep.
It's about the interpersonal skills that you have to not only cultivate for yourself and be reflective of yourself, but you have to grow others so that they'll be able to be reflective and look at it. But if you don't have something for them to look at, just like you said, Mike, they don't know which way to go because you assume that people do what they're supposed to do and treat people right. But sometimes they don't understand it and don't know in a leadership standpoint. Yeah. Sometimes, which I've learned, sometimes you just have to wait on making decisions. I had a great leader tell me that before, and I was like, dude, how can you wait? All this stuff is happening. We got to make decisions now. We got to go. We got to do this. Yeah. But then I realized, dude, sometimes you do have to wait. And sometimes things work out. Sometimes you have to wait and say, all right, I got to wait so that we can collaborate and talk about. Sometimes I got to wait so I can think about what my next step is.
Right.
So waiting is not always a bad thing. It's sometimes you just have to do it. That's not taught in any master's class.
No.
Any principles. And none of my supervisors necessarily. It was a mentor that told me that.
Yeah.
Because it was sometimes people have it innate, sometimes people don't. So my point being is you do have to have something in your hand, tangible, that you can always reflect on. And Drew and I also reflect on a lot of Maxwell stuff. Talk about Maxwell things.
Right.
Because Maxwell, great leader, and a lot of his books are straight up do A, B, C, and D, which are tasks, but then he talks about how this is related to interpersonal skills with dealing with people. So I think those are some pointers I would tell someone about just leadership, keeping in mind to make sure that they do it.
Yeah. And Michael, something that you said resonated with me in particular, right? My staff would get frustrated with me sometimes because I would take time to think through decisions. And I needed to do better at being explicit about like explaining, I need some time on this, right? Like because sometimes you forget to say that part, right? And like let everybody know, like I need to think, I have to work through this. And sometimes and rightfully so, they would be frustrated because I would forget to let them know, like, I need a couple of days on this. Like, these are big decisions that we're making and some, some curriculum decisions or whatever that might require us to shift course. And I need to reflect a little bit on it, but I think being intentional about letting them know that and what they can expect from you and when they can expect to hear a decision, I think is really important. But that really resonates with me because I experienced that myself as a leader. Drew, what do you have to say?
Just two things that come to mind. One is just, I think, a mindset of asset-based or appreciative approach to people in general, right? So when you're thinking about distributed leadership, the more you can put somebody in the right position and play to their strengths, I think the more likelihood you're going to have success. So I was a principal at a performing arts magnet school for a handful of years. And one of the most fascinating processes I watched, we do a musical every year. And I'd watch the theater teacher and the chorus teacher and the dance teacher and it all come together and have like the casting meeting, right? So they just did auditions and they're coming in and they're talking about like it's the strengths of each actor or actress, the role, the needs of the role, right? So all those things, that casting becomes so important as a principal, right? Putting the people in the right position. So that was one thing. And then the second thing, is just really having like a coach approach as a leader. And I'll tell you, like, one thing I was very intentional about as a principal that I think is often very overlooked. I would have 30-minute coaching sessions once a week with my assistant principals, right? So APs often get overlooked. A lot of times they're delegated the non-instructional tasks from the principal when they're a huge potential lever to distributed leadership, right? And so we would sit, and if I had one AP that was working on just giving clear, succinct feedback to teachers. So we would walk a class together and we'd like role play a feedback session and we'd really work on skill building with the coaching frame of mind, right? And so I think as school leaders, we really need to approach that with people. It's compounded when you have a shortage of people, right? So they're not going anywhere and there's nobody on the bench, right? It really becomes important that you take that coaching approach and help everybody get better.
Yeah, no, the coaching component is so important. Michael, go ahead.
Because I was going through, and that's so key. because a lot of times, even as assistant principals, we don't ask for the coaching. Sometimes we assume that it should come to us, but it's okay to go and say, hey, principal, supervisor, I need some coaching. I need to spend some time with you every week and sit down and have conversation. Because I don't know of any leader that would say, no, I don't have time for that. Because you're trying to train and grow people. And if you don't know where you need to grow and not have that conversation, you're kind of lost a lot of times. You're just completing a whole bunch of tasks and thinking I'm good, and you might not be. You know, you never know.
Yep. 100%. No, great points. Well, guys, I think that you've given us quite a bit to think about around distributed leadership. I want to tell you, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me a little bit and talking and being our first guests on Mike the Principal Podcast, man. I appreciate it. It's good stuff. I love it. But tell if you don't mind, where can people find you if they wanna connect with you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on any of the social media channels? Michael, where can people find your work? Where can they connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
So on Twitter, X, at Michael Bobo 74.
Okay, cool. Drew, where can people find you?
Yeah. So on X, I'm at Drew Olson 386. I am on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Cool. I have a website, www.olsonconsultingteam.com. So I do a lot of work outside of my district. And then I'm doing a book project with a couple of professors at Stetson University. So nice. That's gonna the draft is due in May. I'm working on a chapter, but the book title is Journey to the Principalship. It's transitioning from the assistant principal to the principals.
I'll share their contact info too in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get a hold of Michael or Drew, you'll be able to do that. Guys, I appreciate the conversation. It's been great.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having us. Keep doing what you do, man. It's great.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, Mike. Appreciate it.